Yeah, my name is Kafui Day. I'll ask 2 or 3 questions and then I'll throw it back to the media houses who are here. So you're going to ask the finance minister as many questions as you can. We have about 40 minutes. Yeah, so I'll take only about 5% of the 40 minutes and leave the rest to you. Okay, so Mr. Minister, thank you for finding time to speak with us. I'm picking off something you said in your presentation where government workers total 700,000 in Ghana. And from what I heard, 60% of the revenue that the country makes is spent on government and public workers in terms of salaries. Do you look forward to a day when that percentage can seriously come down? And what are the implications if we still maintain 60% or even go up beyond 60%? What are the implications for us?
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, we do have about 700,000 public civil servants, and we do pay anywhere from 56 to 60% of the revenues as wages and compensation, etc. The ECOWAS target is really 35%.
Then we are seriously over the target.
Yeah, but it's also a consequence of the low revenue to GDP ratio, where we are at about 13%, we should be at 20%. So we need to fix revenue collection, which is really ensuring that technology comes into play. So now the overlay of the national ID to GRA, you've moved from maybe 5 million TIN numbers to now potentially 15.5 million. So I think we're going to get to more people than honoring their taxes. But, you know, so any 1% maybe increase in salaries may result in about 300 to 400 million cedis to the government chest. So the issue of really meeting with the youth, contending of a stronger private sector so that they would absorb those jobs, you know, is really very, very critical for us to move forward. And in 2020, government ensured that public sector and civil servants' jobs were protected. If you look at places like Burkina and so, about 25% were laid off, 50% reduced salaries, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So we are hoping that we will understand the sacrifices we all have to make sure that there are resources for other things.
We know that democracy is about expressing your views. My tree is atrocious, but I'll try and pronounce what I hear on the radio stations I listen to in Accra. So, Kabima mean Kabi. So, talk sound, make I talk. Mm-hmm. Do you have the feeling that we are probably just arguing about everything, not just talking? Do you get frustrated that everything that comes out of your mouth in terms of pronouncements on policy is always argued out, and there's always seems to be a negative spin and not enough optimism? Does that frustrate you?
I guess yes and no. I mean, you know, it's like Peter getting out of the boat. Once you begin to look at the waves, you'll sink, huh? So look at Jesus' face. So what is our ultimate goal? I know we are in to do good. I think if you look at the record in the 4 years, you can see a lot of social interventions that were. I think our Obatampa plan is a great plan. That's a quarter of our GDP, the largest in our history. So the issue of, I mean, the arguments as they teach in journalism school, you inform, you educate, and then you entertain. I mean, those are sort of the principles. But I think for a nation like ours, the issue of national cohesion, as Paul Ansa once said, is so fundamental. So if it goes to illuminate, understand the context, and then say that it will take a certain amount of time, then that's okay. So democracy has its cost, but there's no other replacement for it.
So we
need
keep talking.
But I think we need to move to a broad national consensus and then argue on the margins.
Okay.
Or else, we just dispirit everybody and it becomes difficult to gain traction to go on. And then you begin to put politics before policy and, it just reduces the momentum that should be built for us to transform the economy.
Right. I promised only 2 questions. So now I'm going to throw the questions back to my fellow journalists here. Questions in Twi, in English, doesn't matter. You just mention your name, your organization, and then you can throw the questions to the minister. We have microphones around. I think the lady would like to ask a question. Because, yes. I just had the feeling, yeah. Yes.
Okay. My name is Nana Masiedu from ARC FM. I want to ask the minister what his outfit, together with the NBSS, are doing about language barrier, because it looks as if majority of our entrepreneurs from the grassroots do not understand our language for communication. Okay. See, the American say, "You're ready for baby no more from no. I'm on take us na can, especially your queer phone. Until you hear the Greek minister say, "Oh, cabrofo." At the end of the day, no. Yeah, my mom teshe. Until then, say, yeah, but from say, kasa educating of for say any business near the language and so then Then the other one has to do with choir a fast a picture agriculture. Tuba won't say flyers would or baby our team it looks as if say a punishment. You to mean Brandon is a beautiful woman, Okita Nekalas, our dress in a very nice outfit, okay, to just motivate the young one, say, thank you.
So a language issue and then how we are communicating agricultural issues. Any more questions in the House? Yes, please. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm John Sam Arthur from GBC. This question is not directly from the Springboard Youth Dialogues, but once the finance minister is here, I think I want to grab that opportunity. I saw on Facebook recently, and one gentleman was making an allegation. Ghana's debt has become an issue, a very topical issue of late, and this guy was making a claim, an allegation that the finance minister has a data bank, and his deputy also has a similar company. And so their main motivation is that these companies act as transaction advisors when Ghana borrows. And so their main motivation is getting their companies money. That is why they force government to borrow even when Ghana does not need the money. So I'd like to get your reaction to this allegation. Thank you.
Okay. We'll take another question and then we'll get responses. Yes, there's a question. A gentleman at the back. Let me have the microphone.
I'm also Derek Bajanfi from BATV. When we look about last week, government increased, how do you call it, revenue of workers. And then we see there are most organizations or companies who are not willing to comply to this increment. When I say, I mean minimum wage. Government increases it, and most companies are not willing to comply to it and increase salaries of their various workers. So I want to know what measures government has in place for people who are unwilling to comply to these wages. Thank you very much.
So how do you enforce the minimum wage issue so that nobody can pay lower than the minimum wage? And there's an issue of the allegation that you and your deputy are forcing government to borrow money so that you can benefit from it. And then there's an issue of communication of agriculture to make it attractive, and then an issue of local language so that we can get the message down to the entrepreneurs who do not understand English.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. I think language, part of the reason for spreading these organizations around the regions is to ensure that, people communicate in the language that they have. Certainly from Accra, it looks, pretty much English-oriented, and how we, as ministers, should also speak, quote-unquote, the appropriate language when we are out of our offices. And I think that we have to do. Agriculture branding is, we actually, and you call it right, because if we are going to get the youth to be interested in agriculture, then it has to be a different sense of what that is. And I'm sure with this new focus on youth and agric, we should be able to begin to show the new type of farmer, which it will be important to do. So we'll commit to that.
I think she would be happy if you responded in Tree too, so she can get a sound bite for her people on those 2 points, wouldn't you? She wants the both responses in Tree so that she can send it to her people.
The American said, asema wakano yampa na yeng ministers na this year babontia, as I say you can't. I mean, but there's always a problem, because at the challenge I want to say. Sometimes you may feel, say, you are making Tree the dominant language, and that has its own sensitivities, about it. Minim say bia, and no na restrain yang from, doing that, because and you're very pervasive, say, Tree. Is a language that should be touted as, and they're a bit sensitive. But as I say, a boy home modern, you can't the language kwa ye babeshiano. And Juma Hokakra. At the John on the issue, I guess it's it's really very difficult. For me, when accusations are made speculatively, say, oh, we now be every on no be sir, but in the ending, and I think so. Your friends saying, we'll finance the. I mean, we share most of these countries. Ophobia, unima jumano. Actually, say why you be that. And are we also saying that, quote unquote, the best people should not be brought to sit at that table? To throw such huge accusations, without facts. But it's very easy to fire up the imagination and believe that is true, because maybe that's what they did. Becomes, a point of contention, and to say it with such viv, how exactly to confront things of that nature when you also know the people, and maybe they have a bit of a reputation that could be helpful to interrogate before you create these noises. But it's quite a shame in terms of the abuse of democracy, to that level, for people who should know, much better. Because these things affect our pricing in the international market too, and I'm not sure what you gain from, such aspersions, which then leads to a sense of risk for the country, and therefore you might get, 7.375%, and it goes to 7.5% because of loose talk. And I think journalists should also, ask them to prove what they are saying. And the constant repetition of that, which you don't know that is true, also leads to a certain inculcation in people's mind that that's what's going on. And so we are serving, and that's the issue of Paul Ansner talking about all of that, but certainly journalists having a mind for national cohesion and development as important. Yeah. Thank you. So
let me just back up on John. So have you considered taking action against some of these claims that are made? Just recently, I listened, there was a BBC report which found a 19-year-old Singaporean football fan guilty of making threats, death threats against some football player in the EPL. They traced the guy online and found him, and he's facing 2 years in jail. You know, so people make claims that you feel are not founded on truth. Are you tempted to take some action, go after people who say things against your person?
I think it's really a fine line whether the person is going to distract you from the work you have to do, or they are moving you into a ring that, you know, really is not to the benefit of the country. I think when we started in March of 2017, we did some 2-point-something billion deal in which the coffers were completely empty. And I mean, I guess they took it all the way to Shraj and Yoko and Supreme Court or whatever, and nothing came of it. So that's a backdrop for you to then be able to quote. Then away the opposite, you know. But I don't think our journalists challenge us enough with regards to rhetoric, and maybe we should do that, especially when it's impugning the reputation of a fellow Ghanaian. Yeah. So that's it's a call. The issue of minimum wage, you know, minimum wage is not decided by government. There's a tripartite of employers, employees, and government that's set to negotiate that. Then the issue of enforceability is, you know, enforcement is also information, and we protecting ourselves and reporting. You know, you may be working for a company and they are not paying your social security, and if you don't let social security know, you know, there's no enforcement of it. But I think as we get more sophisticated and confident in ourselves, we should be able to get more enforcement going forward on that. But be clear that minimum wage is negotiated in a tripartite way, and then we happen to announce it, but not because we enforce. We negotiate all right, and then we come out of it. Yeah. Thank you. Can you give him the mic?
Hello? Right. Thank you for that. I'll ask one more question and then I'll go back to the floor. So there's been a concern that the ministries and the MDAs are not really accountable. They're not being made accountable for the money that is allocated to them. Are there any new methods that are being employed to make sure that every CD that goes to these MMDAs is accounted for, so that we can have more of the money that we can, the money can work harder for us instead of just going down a rabbit hole to nowhere?
Very good question. And the issue, Kapwe, in a sense of talking about, I know I'm supposed to protect the public purse, it's very clear to me. I think really every citizen is supposed to do that. You know, so when you have a district assembly and we all leave them to do what they want to do, then that sense of you know, freedom to use the money whichever way they use comes on. But we can't continue to be spectators. And I guess, you know, I'm new in government, and therefore, why would you ascribe to me all the knowledge that you all have accumulated that I will be able to answer them? I do have some powers. But really, the day-to-day oversight and watching and impact is with people in the district. And I think we need to be feeling stronger about empowering ourselves to challenge, our neighborhood organizations. Without that, it's really difficult to percolate down. I mean, me taking, a day to come and address the youth is because I'm just looking at the dynamics of the population and saying, in the long run, if we don't build up, this core of people, our future is not safe or guaranteed. So the issue of an activist population, I think, is going to be important. I mean, maybe we should have means of reporting of a digital economy that then ensures that the central government can also respond, much quickly. But there's a lot of waste in the system, and it's sometimes very difficult to give the money out, knowing that X percentage might just be wasted, or you are working in some small town and a gutter has been made which is crooked, or you go to your primary school in Chebi and you see the quality of the desk and you wonder, so who accepted them? And nobody's complaining, the students, the parents, etc. So I think there's a new eclexia that is required as a nation to ensure accountability amongst ourselves.
So instead of us, and the popular refrain in Ghana is, what is the government doing about this? What is the government doing about this? We probably need to be bringing government to our doorsteps and finding out, listen, what's the DCE doing about this? Or what is the Assembly doing about this? Is that where you see this conversation going?
Well, I mean, government, has been voted in to fix things and get things going, so we should. But if we, all the citizens, are aware that if I go to X hospital, is, some officers that cause the problem, you can't ascribe it to government. We have to begin to be introspective, to look at ourselves, and to really challenge, that personnel at the hospital or at the ministry as to their responsibilities and the delivery of service to us. But we can't continue to insist that it's only government that can make the changes. We can't be spectators wherever.
Okay. Coming back to the House. Okay, so you should have a microphone. Please give him a microphone. And let's have some questions from you.
Honorable Minister, my name is Emmanuel Edu Jamra from the Daily Graphic. I want you to answer this question. I've listened to a number of parliamentary debates, not under this government alone, even the previous governments, whereby MPs accuse the Minister of Finance for not releasing all approved budgets for the MDAs for them to undertake the projects for which those amounts were earmarked. How do you explain this scenario under your watch? Has there been any time that amounts approved by Parliament were not fully released to the MDAs for them to embark on their projects? Then secondly, there is this scenario where we have the revenue from the Ghana's oil fund being used as annual budgetary support. Can we have a situation where we can use those monies for certain projects that we can point our hands to say that this is what we've been able to use our revenue for, rather than using it thinly? I want to know if that thing can be done, because I know that there are certain places that such as a scenario is done. Thank you.
Okay, so oil money, can we use it for something concrete instead of using it to support the budget? And why isn't the money flowing to the MDAs? What is causing the blockages? Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think this is sometimes why I like journalists to question sort of this type of orthodoxy. So if you are running a budget deficit, you know we are running a budget deficit. What does that mean?
Raise the amount that we have proposed. So
Okay.
maybe you have to borrow to support, the budget in order that we can
Right.
meet whatever.
And that means also, therefore, in your allocations, you are juggling as to what to release. So for me, the comeback is not that it's not true. By the end of the period, you also have seen quite a bit of stability of the economy. But the challenge then is, how do we raise revenue to make sure that we are more consistent with that? And that's why we moved, the deficit down from 7 to 4.9, and then it went up. So there'll always be, these issues as long as you are not running a surplus budget or a balanced budget. And the choices that one makes, whether you give money to school feeding or livelihood empowerment or MMDAs, and somehow, get the wheels of going. But it's not, I have the money in my pocket and I won't give it to you. That's not the attitude. It's trying to find, some efficiencies and go there. And there are also inefficiencies in the deployment of money when you even, allocate. And the challenge in that becomes important. So that's a burden I carry as to how to manage, if you have 2 kids going to school, what do you do, and how do you serve lunch, or how do you pay school fees? But I think all in all, we have been more effective in the end in making sure that we sustain all of these places that we need to give resources to. Then the issue of ABFA, we do have a law, and therefore you would see that maybe agric and infrastructure, etc., are selected for the use of ABFA funds, and they end up, going there. Now you are then bridging the usual work of the Ministry of Roads, etc., with, I guess, iconic projects that one may want to see. But I suspect that when you begin to look at infrastructure, the current state of our economy and resources, we cannot fund infrastructure through government revenue, and need to be really creative about what we do with GIF, and therefore the intervention of the Development Bank, which can then raise its own resources to bring money in to support that. So you can see we are moving like the district hospitals, trying to get the Ghana Infrastructure Fund to be responsible, for that, by giving them a little bit more money, so that it's a private sector and not a government-controlled thing. Looking at, toll roads in a way in which, if GIF does it, you have EPC contracts that are more market-driven than how government would do it. So thinking about the chart of accounts differently, and moving into more efficient ways of doing that. So there's constant thought going on to that. But in the end, if you pay your taxes, I pay mine. These will not be questions that we'll have. But it's a good reminder of a constant push for efficiency.
Let's come back to the youth. So I've heard you mention that statistic that 75% of the people in this country are under the age of 35. That's 3 out of every 4 Ghanaians is under 35. It's only a very small fraction that will end up in the institutions that have been represented here in Sunyani, which means there's a lot of young people who haven't passed to go to tertiary education, who haven't even left, even past JHS to go to SHS. Does it keep you up at night thinking, hey, we really need to know where to fit all these people and keep the place stable?
Yeah.
Because you may have restless youth with nothing to do, a lot of energy, nowhere to go, and that could bring problems. Does that keep you up at night?
Yeah, it does. I mean, and partly because you can see yourself there, i.e., sort of growing up in Chebi and all of that, and you could be one of those guys on the streets, and it's real, except for certain interventions which change, and you are not necessarily the smartest person in Chebi, LA at that time, but our intervention changed it. And 83% of the youth, we can't find jobs for. So really, in looking at this Obatampa program, it's now beginning to say, look, if we take the overarching issue to be the youth, then how do we create enablers of financial, of digital, and then the issues of, character and hope, etc., to begin to give some direction to where they would go and to be hopeful so they can drive the economy. Because in the end, it's all about people, and people have the capacity to change societies. So if I can be sitting here from that background, clearly there are many more superior people who could do that. And I think the state should get a lot more entrepreneurial, de-risk the issues for them so they can take the challenge to go forward. But there's also failure. Entrepreneurship means you may try about 4 or 5 times, but you can't sleep. You have to take the risk to be able to do that. And I have to find a way to create the macro stability and certain enablers so that people are masters of their destiny. And I think that's a challenge, and that's what keeps one awake, apart from eliminating raw poverty. But the issue of social mobility, that people have the educational skill set to be on their own and are not dependent on people, I think is really crucially important.
Okay. We'll take a couple of final questions and then we'll wrap it up. The gentleman here in the black shirt.
Thank you, Minister. My name is Dennis. I work with GNA.
GNA.
Yeah. Minister, I want to find out, now China is producing cocoa with a new technology. What is Ghana and maybe Cote d'Ivoire is doing to still stay on top? Because China, they are moving very fast. And are we worried as well? And added to that, government intention or government plan to construct the 88 district hospitals by the close of the year. The 88 hospitals by the close of this year. We are now in June. I don't know how we can complete this one, if government is on course to complete it. And last one, we always hear government touting that the economy is on course. But frankly speaking with you, when you come down to the grassroots, people are complaining. We have indicators that shows that, so our economy is on course. Thank you.
Okay, so health of the economy, Chinese chocolates, and 88 hospitals.
Yeah, great. I think the Chinese cocoa is an interesting issue. And, we have a cocoa market that gives us maybe $2 billion a year, on the high side. And then you have a cocoa or chocolate and confectionery global industry of about $140 billion, including, derivatives trading and the actual product, etc., etc. And then you have this producer price that you give to farmers. Huh? They get bitten by snakes, they cut themselves, etc. And maybe a colleague of mine from Yale who is working at a commodity exchange in Chicago might be making $1 million a year because he's, on the higher end of the scale. So then you ask, yourselves as educated Ghanaians, why this dereliction of duty? Why have we in 60 or 100 years not participated in the value chain so that we control it? What disempowers us to do that so that the farmer can actually be paid way beyond the producer price, And I think that's what the challenges we have as a nation is, sort of burying our head in the sand, not taking advantage of the market as it is, a complete misunderstanding. I mean, let's move to the royalties of gold, for example. It's completely bastardized, but in truth, the commodity has 5 times more activity happening than what we do. So we ourselves have to come to a recognition, informed recognition, about where it is we want to take that. So China, of course, will intervene, and everybody is now shaking. But what is it that has stopped us, from pushing the envelope, and what is the informed, educated people doing to make sure that, the 650,000 farmers are getting more than my friend who does not even know what a cocoa bean looks like and is making $1 million. So it's a real challenge, and it pushes us to sit up. So those are the issues as you speak to colleague ministers as to how to challenge ourselves beyond, because I think there's a lot more resources here to be leveraged, to add value, and as President says, to move from this Gadgetsburg economy mindset into something. So, as I mentioned, the issue of political emancipation and now trade and investment as key, we really should put our head into it in full force. So the AFCFTA being here, it's given us a mandate to be regional, to push, and maybe that's a new order of mindset change that is going to be important. The issue of the district hospitals, they are actually 101, moved beyond the 88. Yeah, and the intention was not to complete them, but to really start. I think a lot of the districts have given approved land to the group, and that is responsible for that. They should, I guess, I mean, we transferred, well, when the situation occurred and the president declared that, I guess we then decided that, if you lump it together, you lose sight of Ghanaian enterprise. So let's let the construction all be Ghanaian so that, the issue of equipment, is bifurcated, or else before you know it, it will all be sort of foreign, whatever. So that the construction, and then hopefully at the end of the day, the Ghanaian construction industry will be much stronger and bigger and move on to this housing deficit that we're talking about. So my suspicion, and I need to check, is that maybe by end of July, sort of the full-scale activity is actually quite demanding in terms of doing these large projects. How do you shortlist? How do you get the designs for 100 and 1 hospitals of 100 beds, etc.? Should some really be 60 or 80 because of the population? All of those questions come into play. But I think they pretty much agreed on the various designs. I think they've shortlisted in each zone, and I think they've also phased it as to how it's going to occur. And we have opened an account at the Bank of Ghana, which would also be given to GIF to support and monitor. The inertia from normal government activities will be reduced. There was a third question.
The third question was about, well, government claims that things are going well, but on the ground.
Yeah, I think it's a, Menz, that's a very difficult question for me. It's difficult because, you know where we were in 2016. I mean, you can't pretend you don't know. You know where the economics are now. You also know what happened in COVID. Those claims, I mean, you should be able to put in context, not really just sort of parrot the question and say that, is it all true? And where did we find the resilience to be able to hold our own in 2020? So that you give credit where it's due, things that, have to do, we do. But if we continue to have this sort of depressive mood, we really discourage the body politic. But we need to be able to begin to show, lights as well, because societies have structural issues. You might be angry because somebody was corrupt, but that should not lead to a general sense of, depression and and etc., because things are not. And so that for me becomes a challenge as to how do you, the same thing about the 12 going across Jericho to look at Canaan, and Joseph and Joshua and Caleb saying, "You beat me a year," and then 10 went into the community, and they wanted to go back to Egypt. But was that really it? And where is the issue of national cohesion? Even as we do that, whose responsibility is it to inform, educate, and entertain? Are we going to play chaskele of our future because it suits us when we know the numbers that these are the numbers? Yes, there's debt. Yes, there's this. So I don't. Yeah. So I get you, but I also challenge that maybe we all could do more.
Okay, Mr. Minister, I'm going to wrap it up. Where, you want to score and add the time added on goal. All right. Are you a Manchester fan? They like scoring those kind of goals. It's a Chelsea fan, I see.
Yeah, my name is Daniel Girassa. I report for the Ghanaian Times.
Girassa. Daniel Girassa. From which organization?
Ghanaian Times.
Ghanaian Times, okay.
Yes. I would like to ask the minister, when are we getting our next consignments of COVID-19? Some of us, COVID-19 vaccine. Some of us, we took our first jab, and we are expecting to take the next jab. And we want to find out, when are we getting the next consignment?
Yes, sir. Thank you. John, again, from GBC. There are lots of road projects that are stalling. The Zoom Lion facilities, the waste treatment centers, sort was cut for those projects, but they are all stalling. So what is accounting for this? Is it the juggling you have to do because the expenses are bigger than the pie? Or is it the contractors that are just not good enough? Why all these projects stalling? Although we are in year of roads too, but it doesn't look like that when you see the way the road projects are going. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Those were the last two questions. All right. And these are the last two.
Yeah, please. My name is Osahine. I'm with Oman FM. Please, we understand with the school feeding program, the meals per child is less than 1 gram. What's the government doing about it?
The meals?
Meals per child. It doesn't cost more than 1 cedi.
Okay.
So
to,
what's
to,
go-
to produce the meals?
Yeah, for the children.
Okay.
Yeah.
Per head, 1 CD per head?
Yeah, per student.
Okay. What's the argument? It's too little?
It's too small looking at the economic situation now.
Okay, so 1 CD per head. Okay, all right. And then the last question.
Thank you. My name is Cheba from MacFM. Ken, from sources at various assemblies, they tell us they are yet to receive their common fund. So I want to know if it's true and what has been the constraint. And secondly, we know media houses are one of the avenues which were hard hit when the COVID came. What has been government support so far in recovery? And finally, talking to the ordinary Ghanaian, they keep asking why government officials, especially the finance minister and the likes, keep quoting our monies in dollars instead of the cedis. Is there any reason to this?
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I would like to speak to you because of my listeners. I'm Enoch Ajay from Akonaba
Mr.
FM.
FM, please come back.
I'm Enoch Ajay from Akonaba FM. Honorable, I would like to speak to you in order to favor my listeners. Mepacho Honorable, yenim se omaimu yaba yawo health insurance levies ya eda enema nyina so. But eba health insurance claims in initia providers no only omudi nkomo mo brepa. Etimba se biwa 7 months when you begin nkomo 8 months near china omuntiai. So shemua na ni nyina akwa se obisa yese Ministry of Finance and releases come from health insurance and as a National Health Insurance Authority. Me pacho ede na ministry no ye sene ebeya ye betimi releases card amount 10 so sene ebeboa ye ma me ne papa mu yi ama won business akoso na afi so ya pomudin no etimi akoso medase.
Thank you. That was the last question. So, releasing of funds to the health insurance. There's a blockage there. And the first gentleman was asking about quoting of figures in dollars. And then there were 2 other questions and he disappeared. So
The Assembly Common Fund.
Okay, you're here.
The Assembly Common Fund, which is here too. Whether
Yes.
if indeed it's not in and what
Release
has been
of funds to the district assemblies. Yes. And there was a third one.
The third one was the support by government to various media houses, especially the private entities. Yeah.
Yes. A bailout or some form of support for the media houses because of COVID.
Okay, so I think that was a Ghanaian Times. Was it Daniel? Yes. And so Daniel, what was the question on COVID?
When is the next batch of vaccines?
When the next batch of vaccines? You know, we are not very sure. And that's not because we can pay for it. We are not sure because, as you know, India has stopped exporting. There's a hoard of AstraZeneca in Europe and America, which they are sitting on. So this is the whole vaccine nationalism and the inequity in the system. I think discussions are really quite advanced with America's sharing of some 8 million, and I suspect Ghana will get, its fair share. We've already on the Africa platform, which orders, through COVAS or etc., put in an order for 12 million, of which, the deposit is being done so that we can get, our fair share when it comes. Unfortunately, some countries in Africa could not administer, but then the expiry date came. We were able to get some from DRC, etc., before that. So that was unfortunate because we could have done that. So I'm hoping, that there will be a break, especially in the American discussions, within the next few weeks, so that we can get our supply. Because we have a really impressive system of administering that most systems in Africa don't have, and that's what keeps us ahead in that regard. So, yeah, stay faithful. It will come. Then John talked. I mean, John, we have about roads, for example. I mean, I think we've spent almost about triple, what we came to meet in terms of expenditure, somewhere around, 3.5 billion each year in the past 3 years, and maybe 3.9 last year. And so, but it's really, when you look at the issue of roads, the ministry is really sort of taking a step back to understand that this is a I'm going to 60 billion Ghana cedi problem, and therefore it should be outside of sort of the normal government race to do that if we are to really intervene and make a difference. So the thought is now through how do we get a road infrastructure fund to really tackle, so there will be consistency of resources to them. And then we ourselves too, because I don't think Ghana is necessarily the cheapest per kilometer. Now is it because we don't pay in time, or interest costs, or an overpricing by contractors? So that is the alchemy that we have to resolve, and also really appreciate that we need a specific fund to tackle it, so there will be consistency in that way. And that therefore becomes the issue of how we should tackle infrastructure in many ways. The DACF, of course, in a sense, also affects the issue of waste management, etc. But one of the key sources of revenue in most societies for local government, I mean, central government should not be bothering about waste management and treatment. It should be local. And therefore, the intervention of property taxes as a really key intervention for that. And that, with the digitalization, hopefully will come out with a formula that then enables us to be able to have local resources for a continuum. So I live in Labone, and I think I got my bill for property taxes maybe 2 months ago, and it valued my property at 47,000 Ghana cedis, and then it multiplies by the 0.0079, and I'm supposed to pay 180 cedis a month, a year. Now that's ridiculous, okay, because we have not gone through the issue of evaluation of these properties, but that's also very difficult, and the question is whether we can find a way in which maybe if you live in Labone, your land costs, that one, we can figure that one out and standardize it on that. So that hopefully will be helpful, so that these things will be a thing of the past. Yeah, DACF, I think like most issues, we sort of titrate and then stack them up and pay some. But I mean, the record of payment, I think is much better than we have seen, since we came into government. But there's more to do. Support to media houses. I don't know. I need to look at exactly what has occurred.
It's probably trying to see media houses as essential.
No, they are
stuff,
pretty.
yeah.
I mean, the issue of democracy without journalism is dead. And it's incumbent on government to find means of ensuring that they thrive, and it's an educated media challenges both the citizens and government, and opposition, such that it's a real pillar of stability So I'm with you right there, and I'll find details of exactly where we are with that program. And Hina BM.
There was a question in Tree. School feeding.
School feeding.
Yes, the one CD. The claim is that it's 1 CD per head. It's, okay, so
How do you know that it's less than 1 CD? No, I mean, tell me. How do you know it's less than 1 CD? Where's that information from? It's not less than 1 CD. It is 1 CD. But did you confirm with us? This
deducted from the 1 CD. So actually, make the amount less than 1 CD.
taxes.
Anyway, so your question is?
The question is, the amount is less than 1 CD, which is welfare in what the government doing about?
Okay. We have, we've increased the number, I think, to about 2.9 million, and we are now looking to ensure that all primary schools in the country will benefit from that. But we have to cut, our quota according to, what we have, and gradually increase it as we have. But it's the resources we have that we then share a portion. If I take 60% for paying for public and civil servants, I have this balance that I have to look at. It's not an issue of having money and being cruel about not, but what it is that will keep people coming to school and help facilitate that. I know recently we had some cabinet discussions about how to increase that amount, and that is still being discussed.
I think we're done with all the. There was a question about.
Are we done?
Dollars. Health insurance. Yes. Yes.
Health insurance, DACF. All the statutory funds that we have. We try to give each one enough to go on with the resources we have. But it's not an intentionality that Masheda said, it's really managing to see. I think we paid most of the arrears that we came to meet, and then looking to continue to support what we are responsible for. But we may have to raise some bonds in some of these areas to be able to clear the backlog.
And there was a little one about dollarizing. There was a dollarizing question. Why we keep quoting things in dollars?
It's becoming less and less pervasive because now we have quite a bit of stability in the currency. I think we've even appreciated maybe this year some, which is quite an important feat. And last year also we held our own quite a bit,
All right.
Do that.
So
Thank you.
We're wrapping everything up right now. So it's a youth dialogue. So imagine a young person, gentleman or young lady, asking you, Finance Minister, how do I bounce back as a young person from COVID? How do I find opportunities? What's the key takeaway you would give that young person?
I mean, first of all, you can't give up. I mean, entrepreneurship has its risk, etc. I think in coming here was a menu of things. What is NEIP doing, and what is MBSSI doing? And those are really effective sort of systematic change. I mean, what we have to do for the youth, changing of systems, that's important. Scalability is important. And then a structure that people understand so that they know where to go. And I think we're going to, find resources more and more for this kind of universal model to move forward. But entrepreneurship has its risk. We, as a government, recognize the power of the youth in terms of the current situation and our future. And therefore, I'm sure we'll come up with a real groundbreaking way of having a sustainable system that will de-risk their ventures and get them excited of a renaissance going forward. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kenneth Furiata. We're grateful for your time. Thank you.